Hello and welcome back. I'm Arjun Vishwanathan, and I'm immensely pleased to introduce my panelists for today, who is a gentleman of immense repute in the field of cyber resilience and cybersecurity. And I'm going to be in conversation with him over the next 30 minutes to understand and examine the evolving threat landscape in the cybersecurity domain that is fairly prevalent, clear, and present. So without further ado, please join me and put your hands together to welcome Dr. Mark van Staal-Dijn, Managing Director, CFlow, and expert consultant with Interpol. Mark, welcome, delighted and privileged.
Thank you very much. Welcome to.
Thank you. Mark, we've got an interesting 30 minutes ahead, and I intend to put that to full use. My first question to you really, Mark, is over the last 2 years, pretty much since the pandemic hit us, remote work and geographically displaced workplaces emerged. We have increasingly also seen a certain acceleration of the sophistication of threat attacks, ransomware, and many such across the globe, in fact, different corners of the globe. As we have also seen the evolution of technology to perhaps address such threats to a modicum of its ability. Now, my question to you really is, this sophistication in the threat landscape and its evolution, why don't you explain that to us in your narrative?
Yes, well, thank you very much for the question and having me in this fireside chat. So if I look outside, and especially to the last 2 years, soon when COVID pandemic hit us, it started from the east and easily spread out all over the world and affected everybody. To some extent, it was a bit of a surprise, probably to most of us, how resilient we already were. Because it was a matter of weeks, I think, or probably even days, that really a major part of the workforce could start to work from home and could work online, and major part of the jobs could continue without meeting people physically and operating online. And I don't think before the pandemic we were aware that actually the technology was ready to move in that direction. So this has been to some extent let's say an accelerator of the digital transformation. And this digital transformation we were in already for years, because the world is digitizing by mobile, by being online everywhere, get all the devices connected. This transition is taking place already for years, but the pandemic accelerated it. As a result of this acceleration, we also saw more and more people working from home. So as a result, and for the audience, for your information, I am based in the Netherlands. We have seen an enormous drop in burglars.
Indeed.
So people stealing from the houses, getting physically in and take stuff, well, the opportunity was gone because people were working from home. So where to steal the goods? Because in the end, we have criminals. We can't avoid this part. And in your introduction, you mentioned I'm a consultant to Interpol, work a lot with law enforcement. With our company, we develop law enforcement technology. So this is our core. We study how criminals operate, where they operate, how they do their jobs. And in this digital transformation, we also saw the transformation from physical crimes to digital crimes and the uptake of cybercrime. And I think this happened globally. And you already mentioned cybercrime or ransomware and many of the other proliferations. We really have seen an uptake of this part over the last 2 years. And this brings a lot of responsibilities to develop better protections in the first place, because, well, it's stupid to not lock your door. But we also know, and to some extent you already referred to this, even if you close your door, if you have a lot to lose, So if you have really valuable digital goods, probably think about cryptocurrencies.
Indeed.
There is an intrinsic motivation by criminals to go after them also behind your wall. And that is the next step, at least you have to think about. Like, okay, I lock my door, I have my basic cyber hygiene, basic cybersecurity in place, but still I can't guarantee, and nobody will guarantee that a cyber criminal enters your company. What will happen if they are in? Where are your assets? Are they well protected? Are you resilient? Are you able, after an attack, to recover and continue your operation, let's say in 1 hour? Or probably you're running a huge industrial plant within a day, because not operating your company makes you bankrupt, usually in a quite short amount of time, especially in these big industrial cases. But also for many other companies, don't having access to the data, don't having access to the valuables, causes huge damages, including bankruptcy or other issues, also to our critical infrastructure. So
Actually, that's quite fascinating as you put it. And I did note down one particular point that you mentioned, which is about it's simplest to lock your door. But quite often, Mark, do you feel that it's classically become a case of bolting the door after the horses have bolted? My question is, increasingly, cyber resilience as a concept, which is slightly more expansive than cyber security by itself, also is about identification and prevention before it occurs. In that sense, how do you see technology having evolved to be able to address the sophistication of cybercrime and cyber threats in a more preventive, preemptive fashion?
Well, honestly, I do see technological advances to properly implement cyber resiliency measures. It's quite in an early phase. So one of the most important thing here is asset management. You need to know what your where your valuables are. What are your assets that if you lose them, you really have a problem? Well, first of all, you need to identify them. And second, you should manage them probably in a different way than, let's say, your basic intranet or your website. And I think the awareness of digital asset management is really in an early stage. Some companies are providing solutions there, but it's in an early stage.
It is, isn't it? Which is why I think the imperatives also come in where we look at the whole concept of how many traditional businesses are now accelerating their focus on adoption of a secure, agile, and a digital business model. In that sense, for folks who tend to think digitally native, what would be your prescriptive guidance on how to approach the whole concepts of resilience and business continuity in a set of reimagined realities that we live in today?
Yep. Well, I think if you look at the lists of unicorns, now these are all digital companies building platforms and having these platforms setting a certain marketplaces, either whether it's for properties, it's for traveling, it's for taxis. So, and many, especially newcomers, but also traditional companies are thinking like, hey, how to move in this platform economy, or what will be my position in this platform economy? Well, in the end, if you look at this platform economy, it's just bringing the demand and the offering parties together. So most important is to guarantee a certain level of security on the data level. Like, I don't want my data to be leaked from such a platform because my trust will be gone. And if trust is gone in the marketplace, it's really devaluating the case. So again, here, one of the key assets they have is where they bring the information together from the demanding and the offering parties. And this should be protected really, really well. And this involves privacy measures, but from my perspective, it's even much more on business continuity, because if you lose this data and people lose trust in the marketplace, you're more or less out of business. So yeah, being aware that so personal information is really a sensitive thing. To some extent, we all know this because we have heard about the Facebook leaks and the LinkedIn leaks. But how to implement it and be really aware where this data is, who can access it, how people can access it, how can we leak it, what are the business model of the criminal as well, if they have this data. And probably not only my personal data, but also your transaction data. What is the implication of leaking this data? Those kind of scenarios you have to work through to identify your assets and really bring your asset management and the security of your asset management to a next level.
And it's interesting that you brought up the whole concept of data, because increasingly data that is being generated in such volumes across organizations, across the globe, is also very, very existential in nature to the organization by itself. In that sense, would you agree that organizations and enterprises and security folks will require a new way of thinking, like you rightly articulated, in most part, because the castle by itself no longer exists in isolation as it once did. Data is being produced all over the place with the levels of automation, connected devices, sensors, and so on and so forth. In that kind of a scenario, how do security experts sleep peacefully at night with such a distributed form of data collection, storage, and processing?
Well, I think so. To position your question probably a little bit more in a technical sense.
Indeed.
So what we do see nowadays is that all these platforms indeed are connected. They are connected through the application programming interfaces. You can't build your platform without a good API, as we call this, because that is the way how the machines of these different organizations are connected together. And we can consider these networks as kind of supply chains, because they need each other. One provides some data, the other provides some other value, a transaction. And so to secure this whole network, one of the most urgent topics nowadays to study and to develop is API security. Because this is not about humans getting in, but it's machines getting into other machines and getting into another machine over the APIs. And this is really one of the huge challenges. And often also, these, I won't say people forget, but it's really a key thing to develop API security and bring it in the core of your cybersecurity measures. So, for example, one of the things how we develop our platform is also we develop API first. And this is a trend that we do see broadly. If in order to develop the platforms, we're not going to start with a sophisticated dashboard where you serve the client. No, we develop the core, we develop the data models. On top of this, we develop the APIs such that our interface can connect with it, but also all our partners with whom we are together creating the value that is needed. So API first is more and more becoming a methodology to develop the platforms in this platform economy, but still huge challenge there, API security, how to develop that in a proper way. And well, we do our best as well, of course, learn a lot from pen testers and all the traditionals. At the same time, also here you have to think about API resiliency. How should that work in the future?
No, that's actually fascinating. And therefore, my question to you, as a supplementary or a follow-through to what you just articulated in such forceful fashion, is that therefore, do cyber resilience strategies that are being crafted today need a sense of leadership and culture change embedded into their very fabric?
Well, what is the most fascinating thing I found it fascinating. Other people will use other terms, but I found this fascinating. This whole digital space, this platform economy is developing super fast. So if you want to have a winning concept in this space, you need to be fast in the market.
Indeed.
Time to market is a key thing from the business perspective, but being also secure at the same time, usually people are not initially interested in, this is probably not the best platform, but it has the best security. People don't buy it like that. People just want to go for the easiest, the nicest, the best offers. That is how the people act. And for the end user, security is an afterthought till your platform got hacked and the data is leaked. And that is where it's key. And it's also from the security community, sometimes frustrating. Like, yes, come on, guys, it's great you choose market first or time to market as your highest priority.
Yeah.
But what about security? And what about security by design? Why didn't you implement security really from the core of your design? Well, this is a strategic choice in your development process. This, of course, comes with a cost. Security
Indeed.
never comes for free. So when you're making your budgets and you're designing your systems, if you don't take security into account there, it will not be implemented. So this is a board level thing where on board level, you should identify this is a key risk. I have a cyber risk if my platform is hacked. So how do we guarantee and how do we budget developing security in the platform, preferably by design? But we know it's often an afterthought. And then still, it needs to be there. Because also for me, we are developing our law enforcement technology also in a platform way. So we are connected to others. And I need to be able to trust the others. So probably I am doing a good job there. But if the others don't, or the other way around, if I'm the weakest spot, and that is, if you look at cyber criminals, they are so good in finding the weakest link, and they will find it, and they will go after it, and they abuse it because they see the opportunity and take the opportunity.
That's actually quite interesting, and which is why I found it, well, a combination of strange and amusing that a cyber resilience strategy is perhaps one of those strategies, and please do correct me if you find this wrong, but cybersecurity as a strategy is perhaps one of those strategies which has only one metric, either somebody is breached or has not breached. But in that sense, as organizations put together a cyber resilience strategy and a blueprint in place, which is a plan for action, what in your view are metrics that they should certainly look at to be able to measure their efficacy as well as their efficiencies in having put up a blueprint that serves its purpose?
Yeah, well, one of the key metrics I often use is how fast, after an attack and assume the worst, how fast are you able to recover? Recovery time is, and because if you are sure you can proceed after 1 hour, assuming everything is down, well, take your worst case scenario and see how. I think that is one of the key things, the key metrics that you should or you can focus on. Yeah. Other metrics, of course, what is the also kind of think in terms of valuations. 100% security doesn't exist. That is, people would like to buy it, but it doesn't exist. So there is always a risk. Like there is also a risk when you walk on the street or driving a car. There is a risk driving a company. So, but what is exactly the risk? Try to quantify this. And this again starts with your asset management valuation, well, impact measures, and probability that things happen. And these are so also probability that an attack takes place or an attack is successful. You can influence by better securities, but you can adjust the probability. You can't get guarantees there.
So therefore, Mark, in your work that you do at CFlow as managing director and in your consultations and work with varying sectors, what is your advice to business leaders on how to even approach it? Because quite a few of them that you may be speaking with may not be technologically as evolved to be able to understand the import of the entire blueprinting right in a fashion, in a sense of being embedded within the very fabric of business modernization strategy. What is the consultative approach that you take, and what is your advice to leaders, business leaders?
Yeah. Well, if you if I look at the let's say the last 10 years of development in the digital space, initially we just had let's say firewall companies that started to develop protection. If you look at the cybersecurity landscape nowadays, it's quite a complicated space where we have pen testers, threat intelligence providers. Ourselves, we are more on the law enforcement technology, so getting criminal intelligence from cyberspace. So it's quite a huge landscape, and I can imagine for companies developing their platforms, it's quite hard to navigate.
Indeed.
Like, which company should I ask to provide me what solution? But in order to get there, maybe it sounds a little bit basic, but it starts with the awareness. Do we, and this should be done on board level now, this is not something you can say to the IT guys.
It's not something to be delegated.
Develop a solution, and by the way, do it secure. Because it's a business risk, it's not a technical risk. And this business risk should exist on board level. At the same time, it's such a complicated space. So what kind of questions should board level ask, or what should they exactly delegate? Well, this is, and first it starts with awareness, but thereafter it's really by doing, asking, and really understand your risk. And as long as you're not satisfied with the answer, keep asking. If needed, hire a consultant that can navigate you through this cybersecurity space. But you should have convincing answers to get in control of your cyber risk. And nowadays, I still see so many companies operating like, I'm not sure what is the right English saying here, but on the sake of hope, like we hope everything goes well. And as long as we have an attack, I hope we recover soon. And I hope we don't lose so much.
Yeah, it's living on a prayer.
And yes, living on a prayer. And this is typically something, as a businessman, this is what you're constantly doing. You see the opportunity and you manage the risk. And this is, if you're in this platform economy, you know which direction you want, but manage your risk. And one of the key risks nowadays is your cybersecurity, is your cyber risk. And it's not easy. And every platform is different, and every business is different, and every valuation of your asset is different. But if it's not on top of your mind, it will be your Achilles heel. Yeah. So bring it to the board level and have a plan. Have asked your questions, have a recovery plan, have a resiliency plan. And if it's not there, and if it's just in your mind, it's not there. So it's a matter of work. You should do it. Like you fix the lock on your door and have your physical security in place. You have to do this the same way in your cyberspace as well. And you will, it's quite easy. At some point, you'll find out you need to have the pen testers to test your systems. You have to have threat intelligence feeds to be prepared and to better understand the threat that is coming towards you. But it starts with asking the question and getting your risk under control.
And therefore, Mark, my question to you is, this is, of course, for the board members, for the C-level, which equally increasingly now encompasses the IT or the information security leader within an organization. Therefore, having had the learnings and the experiences of the last 2 years, fairly eventful 2 years, at least in the cyber risk, cyber resilience landscape, 3 imperatives that you think all CIOs across the globe must follow when they are crafting the strategies and putting into operation.
So you're asking me the 3...
Yeah. So, what are the 3 imperatives that you would recommend to all CIOs and or chief information security and data protection officers to follow as a cardinal truth when crafting their cyber resilience strategies and putting them into operations?
Yep. Well, as mentioned, it starts with awareness. So that part we have done. Then you should also start with put your money where your mouth is. So what is the security budget?
It's true.
If there is no budget, it's just a requirement, it's not gonna work. So first, allocate a budget. Security comes with a cost. If there is no budget, there is no security. Second, have the physical plan. It should not be in the back of your mind or a responsibility on, you should have something in writing. What is the way, how we protect, where are the assets, how have we done this? And I think another one that we didn't discuss a lot, because in the end, if you have your security well in place, still the most vulnerable link in the end in your organization is the employee. Yeah. They can still click on the wrong link. And I'm working in this space for 10 years, but I'm 100% sure if somebody wants me to click on the wrong link, you can social engineer me. Look at my LinkedIn, look at my interests are, and just send a very good email and I will click on the link. Yeah. For sure. So everybody can become in such, so also there, resiliency, but also the training of the people. Training of your people is probably, and it's not the most difficult part to do, but bringing the awareness to a higher level. And one of the things that we have learned over the past, you can do a good cyber training, let's say today, and think you're done. But the strength is in the repetition. So let's say every few months, you should have a small exercise, an experiment to bring the awareness to the right level. And then slowly you will see your company will really grow into its cyber resiliency strengths.
Fantastic, Mark. This has been one of those amazingly fascinating conversations, just hearing you articulate your views in such supreme fashion. But I have a view on the clock. I know you've got a hard schedule ahead. Quick couple of points that I wanted to seek your views on. A couple of years back, or maybe even late last year, many analyst firms came up with predictions around the whole concept. And one particular one that caught my eye was one that said that anonymity by the year 2023 will only exist on the dark web. Now, is that a reality?
Well, I don't. So for sure, in the dark web space, there you are technically anonymous, and people abuse this anonymity for many illicit, illegal and illicit purposes. But I don't think it's the only place where it exists. There are VPN alternatives that can help you to operate anonymously as well. But to be honest here as well, although we do see a lot of crime coming along as a result of this anonymity, I don't have a problem with Tor, which is the main provider of dark web technologies. It's, to some extent, it's a human right to operate free on an open internet. But I really have deep problems with all the criminal concepts that we do see, and we try to get a finger behind it and try to get after the criminals. And I'm really proud to see that we are succeeding there in many more cases. And I really hope at some point, and it will be after 2023, that we have a way much better balance, like the availability of anonymity on the internet to operate in a way people want, versus the crime that we do see abusing these technologies. And at this moment, it's a complete imbalance. But I really hope we can, with all the efforts we are doing, and of course it's not just we as a company or law enforcement community, but this is really a global responsibility.
Absolutely, and couldn't agree more. And with that hope, Mark, my deepest gratitude to you today for taking the time out to join us all the way from the Netherlands. Thank you so much. We are truly privileged.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure from my side too. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all from us here in this segment. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the next segment in just a moment.